What if I told you that one man, armed with nothing but confidence and lies, convinced the world's wealthiest, the most educated, even banks themselves to hand over billions of dollars? No product, no proof, just promises. How far would you go to trust someone? A charming voice, the confident smile, and promises that felt too good question. For thousands of people, that trust became the most expensive mistake of their lives. This wasn't a street-level hustle. This was a performance so polished, so convincing, that even seasoned bankers, celebrities, and the world's elite fell under its spell. Money poured in by the millions, and no one dared to ask, where's it really going? By the time the truth surfaced, lives were shattered, fortunes gone, families broken, and the man at the center still playing the role of a lifetime. Tonight, we unravel the anatomy of one of the greatest financial deceptions in history. From a first spark of trust to the empire of lies to the shocking collapse that left the world asking, how could this happen? Stay with us, because by the end of this story, you'll know the tactics that fooled even the smartest among us and the warning signs you cannot afford to ignore. Every great scam begins with something simple. Trust, and trust, when placed in the wrong hands, can be more dangerous than any weapon. Before the collapse, before the headlines, there was only admiration, respect, and belief in a man who seemed larger than life. He wasn't just another businessman. He was a visionary, a storyteller, someone who could turn financial jargon into music for the ears of those desperate to believe. He dressed success. He spoke success. He was success. At least, that's what everyone thought. He built a world of credibility brick by brick. Offices in the most expensive zip codes. Partnerships with banks that didn't ask too many questions. An inner circle of believers who spread his gospel of wealth. And slowly his reputation became untouchable. To question him wasn't just foolish. It was unthinkable. For the victims, it felt like destiny. Imagine being told, you're special, you're chosen, you're about to be part of something that will change your life. Who wouldn't want to believe? Some invested life savings. Others mortgaged homes. A few gave more than they could ever afford. And each one felt lucky to have been invited into the fold. The brilliance of his scheme wasn't just in the numbers. It was in the emotions. Greed, fear of missing out, the hunger for security. He knew exactly which buttons to push, and when. And by the time anyone stopped to think, they were already trapped in his web. But behind every smile there's a secret, and his secret was about to destroy thousands of lives. It always begins with a picture, a face carefully chosen, borrowed from someone else's life. A soldier who seems brave, a businessman who seems powerful, a traveler who seems free. These are not just images. They are bait, dangling on the hook of desire and hope. Behind the screen, there is no soldier, no businessman, no glamorous world traveler. Only someone sitting in a dark room, copying stolen photographs and weaving stories to fit them. A tragic backstory here, a dazzling career there. Every detail carefully engineered to make strangers believe they've found someone extraordinary. They don't ask for money right away. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, they drown their victims in attention. Messages every morning, calls every night, compliments that make you feel like the only person in the world. It's intoxicating. The brain begins to release dopamine, the same chemical high as falling in love. And love, once it takes hold, makes even the sharpest minds blind. The scammer knows this. They count on it. They aren't selling lies. They're selling feelings. And feelings are harder to question than facts. And then one day, the story shifts. There's a problem, an emergency, a moment of crisis that only you, out of everyone in the world, can solve. It might be a medical bill, a business deal frozen by red tape, a plane ticket home. Small at first, almost believable. A few $100s. A simple wire transfer. Nothing that sets off alarm bells. In fact, helping them only deepens a bond. Because now, you're not just in love. You're their hero. This is where the trap tightens. The requests never stop. Each one slightly larger, slightly more urgent, and always wrapped in the language of love. You're the only one I can trust. We're in this together. Without you, I have nothing. Every word cuts deeper, binding the victim closer, even as their bank accounts drain away. To an outsider, it seems obvious. Why keep sending money? Why not just stop? But love doesn't work like that. Once the emotional investment is made, walking away feels like betrayal, not of the scammer, but of the relationship the victim believes is real. The human brain clings to hope, even when the evidence screams otherwise. By now, the money is flowing steadily. Thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes millions, and all of it fueled by one simple truth. The victim still believes in a love story, but the love story was never real. It was always a lie with a price tag. It ends quietly, not with a confession, not with an explanation, just silence. One day, the messages stop, the profile vanishes, and with it, every promise, every declaration of love, every dream of a shared future. For many, this is the moment reality breaks. The person they trusted never existed. The money they sent is gone forever. And every word that once felt like affection now echoes as manipulation. It is not just financial loss. It is a collapse of belief. The sudden knowledge that the love story was never real. Some victims lose their life savings. Others lose their homes. But for most, the deepest wound is not in the bank account. It is in the heart. They remember the late-night calls, the whispered words of devotion, the future they planned together. And now, each memory feels poisoned. Because every "I love you" was a tool. Every sweet message was a trap. Every detail of the relationship, carefully calculated to deceive. The collapse of a scam is not a private tragedy. It ripples outward, touching families, friends, entire communities. A son who can't understand why his mother drained her savings. A daughter watching her father lose the home he worked for all his life. These scams do not just steal money. They steal futures. They fracture trust between loved ones. They leave behind silence where there used to be laughter, suspicion where there used to be closeness. And then there is the shame. Many victims never speak of what happened. They bury the story deep, too embarrassed to admit they were deceived. They worry people will call them foolish, blind, naive. But what most don't understand is that these scams are not about intelligence. They are about emotions. They are engineered to target hope, loneliness, and trust, the most human of all qualities. When the story reaches the news, judgment follows. Strangers online mock the victims. Headlines reduce their suffering to numbers. The cruelty is relentless. And yet, behind every statistic is a person who believed in love, who trusted in kindness, who simply wanted to belong. To call that foolish is to misunderstand the power of human longing. For the victims, the collapse is not just the end of a relationship. It is the end of trust itself. And when trust is broken this deeply, rebuilding can take years. Sometimes it never comes back. Because the cruelest part of the con is not the money that's stolen, but the humanity that's betrayed. When the scam collapses, the victims are left in ruins. But the hunt for justice is just beginning. Behind the silence of vanished profiles lies a global shadow network. And now, law enforcement must step into the maze. From the FBI to Interpol, cybercrime units worldwide are flooded with reports. The scams may seem personal, but they are rarely isolated. Behind a single fake profile may be an entire room of scammers, working in shifts, sharing scripts, using stolen photos. For investigators, the challenge is enormous. Every lead is digital. Every clue vanishes at the click of a button. Some scammers are caught. Raids uncover call centers. Love scam factories hidden in plain sight. Arrests make headlines. But for every one brought to justice, dozens more slip away. They vanish into the web of anonymity. New names, new profiles, new victims waiting. It is a game of whack-a-mole on a global scale, and the criminals are always one step ahead. But the deepest fallout is not tracked on law enforcement charts. It lives in the hearts of the victims. Many say they will never trust again. Not a stranger, not a friend, sometimes not even themselves. Because if they could be fooled so completely once, how can they ever believe in love again? And then comes the stigma. Victims often find themselves doubly punished. first by the scammer, then by society's cruel judgment. How could you fall for that? They are asked. The ridicule isolates them further. Shame silences their voices, and the silence ensures the cycle continues, as others fall prey to the very same schemes. But slowly, some victims find strength in numbers. Support groups emerge. Online communities form. People who once felt alone discover others carrying the same invisible scars. In those spaces, healing begins, not through money returned, but through voices heard, stories shared, and the simple comfort of knowing they are not alone. And yet, even as one case closes, hundreds more open. For every victim who finds closure, another is just beginning their nightmare. The question remains, can this war ever truly be won? Or will the scammers always find another way to exploit trust, love, and hope? This is the true cost of financial crime. It does not end with stolen money. It ends with stolen faith in humanity. Romance scams work because they prey on hope. They don't begin with money. They begin with attention, with comfort, with promises of love. But sooner or later, the request comes. And in that moment, you must stop, question, verify. The golden rule is simple. Don't send money to someone you haven't met face to face. Not for plane tickets, not for medical bills, not for business emergencies. If love is real, it should not come with a price tag. Most scam profiles use stolen photos, models, soldiers, travelers. A simple reverse image search can expose the lie. If one face appears under a dozen different names, you're not talking to a person. You're talking to a script. Scammers thrive in secrecy. They pressure victims not to tell anyone. That's why it's vital to involve trusted friends or family before making big decisions. Sometimes an outside perspective is the clearest defense against manipulation, love bombing, gaslighting, urgency. These are the scammers' weapons. They flood you with affection, then twist it into obligation. They create fake emergencies, push for secrecy, and play on guilt. Real love builds slowly. Scams move fast. If you suspect you've been targeted, report it to local authorities, to online platforms, to cybercrime units. Silence protects the scammer. Speaking out protects the next potential victim. Romance scams succeed because they prey on hope. But knowledge is power. With vigilance, with caution, with open conversations, we can end the cycle. Because love should never cost you your life savings. And trust should never be a weapon used against you. It begins with words on a screen, a promise of love, a voice that feels warm and safe. But behind the screen is not love. Behind the screen is a deception carefully crafted to take the very things we hold most dear, our trust, our hope, our future. We've seen how it unfolds, the careful manipulation, the slow build of trust, the devastating collapse, the endless fallout. The victims are not just numbers in a headline. They are people, parents, grandparents, sons, daughters, who believe in something we all crave, connection. To mock them is to forget that any one of us could be vulnerable, because what these scams exploit is not ignorance. It is humanity. But from every story of deception comes a chance to learn, to warn others, to build resilience. The more we speak, the harder it becomes for scammers to hide. The more we share, the more lives we protect. If you've watched this far, you already hold the most powerful weapon against these scams: awareness. Share this story. Talk to your parents, your friends, your co-workers. Warn those who might be vulnerable. And if you've been a victim, know this: you are not alone. Your voice matters. Speaking out is not weakness. It is strength. Romance scams are not just about money. They are about hearts. But hearts, even when broken, can heal. Trust, even when shattered, can be rebuilt. And hope, even when stolen, can rise again. Together, we can make sure fewer stories end in silence and more end in survival. If this story moved you, help us bring more of these truths into the light. Subscribe for more stories from the shadows of crime. Share this video to protect someone who might need to hear it. And remember, the best defense against deception is awareness.